The Red Rag Riddle. Chapter 13. The Curious Snapshot. Acey, Miriam, Christy and J. Michael rode with Mr. Peace and Mr. Lovejoy to the Springers' bus home at the edge of the town. Katy came running out of the bus first, followed by Bobby and their mother, who seemed to have given more attention to her hair and clothes than when the children had last seen her. She recognised them right away. "Hello," she greeted them politely. "Good afternoon, Mrs. Springer," said Acey. "You remember J. Michael, Miriam and Christy, don't you?" "Oh, of course," she smiled. "This is Mr. Peace, Miriam's dad, and Mr. Lovejoy, Christy's father. It's nice to meet you," she smiled. Acey paused and tried to collect his thoughts. He was a little down about having to tell the Springers that the money they needed wasn't available. "I'm afraid we have some sad news," Acey broke the silence. "Would you like to explain, Miriam?" Miriam swallowed the growing lump in her throat. She smiled weakly and began. "Mrs. Springer, we're here because, we were all watching the parade. I was, Sandy was, Sandy's mum and my mum too. There was so much to see that we weren't paying close attention to the money box. We never dreamed anything would happen. And with all of us standing in broad daylight, it was the most money we've made all summer." Her voice broke. "Yes?" Mrs. Springer leaned forward, trying to understand where Miriam was going with this speech. "You see," J. Michael continued, "sometime between the time the parade started and when it ended, somebody stole the money box out of our booth." "Oh, I see," Mrs. Springer said quietly, and she stared at the ground. Katy tugged gently at her mother's thin skirt. "Does that mean I won't be getting new clothes?" She looked at her mother and then at the children and then at the parents. Christy's stomach twisted in a knot. Mrs. Springer nodded her head slowly. "Well," she was trying to cover her disappointment. "Thank you for trying. I know you wanted to help. You've been good to us. We do appreciate." "Hey, what are you all doing over there?" Ronnie asked curiously as he skidded to a stop on his bike. Loose gravel sprayed the bottom of Acey's feet. Acey said evenly, "We were just telling the Springers the bad news about the bake sale." "What bad news?" Ronnie asked. He acted as if he knew nothing. "Somebody stole all the money we made," Acey said. "Not only from the bake sale booth, but also from the lemonade stand. It's extra bad because we were going to give the money we earned at the bake sale to the Springers." "Aw, that's too bad," Ronnie said. And he looked a little too sad to be believable. "I mean, that's too bad about the bake sale, but I know who stole the money from your lemonade stand," he added with a gleam in his eyes. "You do?" Christy almost yelled, her eyes bugging out. Tell us, tell us." Ronnie pointed a finger at Bobby Springer. Acey looked at J. Michael. J. Michael looked at Acey. Christy felt sick. Surely it wasn't true. It couldn't be. This is what they had feared. Bobby Springer was the one who had been standing by the lemonade stand when Acey and Racer came back outside from helping Mrs. Virtueson with Susie. He had looked nervous and uncomfortable, but the students couldn't bring themselves to believe that Bobby would do such a thing. "He did it," Ronnie barked. "I did not," Bobby frowned, and his fingers began to curl up into a fist. "I never stole any money in my life. I may not be the smartest kid in town, but I know the difference between right and wrong, and I wouldn't steal." His stomach tightened, and the muscles in his legs tensed. Mr. Peace stepped between the two boys and questioned, "How do you know Bobby took the money, Ronnie?" "Well, I was chasing Susie down the sidewalk, and she fell and hit the lemonade stand. Racer, Acey and Mrs. Virtueson went in to fix Susie's scraped knees, and, well, while they were gone, I saw Bobby take the money." "I thought you left when Susie told you to go away." Acey jumped into the conversation. Ronnie gave him a mean look and turned his head. "You mean you didn't try to stop him?" asked Mr. Lovejoy. Ronnie spluttered and threw his arms up in the air. No, I didn't know what to do. I'm only a kid. Mrs. Springer looked very hurt. Go back into the house, Bobby Joseph Springer. There will be no more about this until your father gets home. Bobby turned obediently, but pleaded, Mother, please don't believe him. I never took the money. You know I wouldn't do that. Blood rushed to his head. He didn't know which hurt the most, Ronnie's words or his mother's look of disappointment. I just went by to say hi. That's all. I promise. Acey wished he could crawl into a hole. He felt so helpless. J. Michael wished he were invisible. Christy wanted to help, but she didn't know how. I wish I hadn't come here, Miriam thought. Just a minute, Mrs. Springer. Let Bobby stay while we hear this story out. Mr. Peace said, I'm not yet convinced Bobby did anything wrong. Ronnie, just because Bobby was standing by the lemonade stand doesn't prove he took the money. But I just saw him with $25 in his hand, Ronnie almost yelled. Acey asked quietly, How did you know $25 was in the money box, Ronnie? I never said how much money we lost. Whoops. Just then a car horn honked behind the little group. Everyone turned to see a dark blue car that had pulled up quietly. Still tucking in his shirt and smoothing his hair, a stranger jumped out and quickly walked towards the group. His thick glasses could explain why his tie and suspenders didn't match too well, but he looked like a kind person. The man cleared his throat. I have some information that may interest all of you. I happened to be at the Founders' Day parade taking a few pictures. When I developed the film, I found a very strange photo among them. You might be interested to see it. Ronnie looked away, uninterested. The gentleman handed the mysterious photo to Mr. Peace. Mr. Peace held it close and squinted his eyes. I see, said the lawyer slowly. Thank you, sir, and he shook the man's hand. We'll take it from here. Mr. Peace didn't ask any more questions, and the stranger didn't give any answers. As you wish, said the gentleman. He turned to hop back into the car. Acey thought he caught a glimpse of something red on the car seat, but before he could say anything, Mr. Peace began speaking again and the car sped off. Ronnie, you say you counted out $25 by the lemonade stand? Yes, Ronnie said slowly. No, I didn't count out $25. Bobby did. Tell me, Mr. Peace said, holding out the picture. How much money did you count out of this money box? Ronnie frowned and looked at the picture. I don't understand what you mean, he stuttered, and all of a sudden he had nothing to say. Take a good look at the booth in this picture. Do you notice anything unusual? Mr. Peace moved the photo closer to Ronnie so he could have a better look. Ronnie pretended to look at it. No, he lied. Look again, Mr. Lovejoy suggested. Ronnie looked a little closer. I see some girls watching a parade, that's all. He lied again. What about the boy in the picture? The boy with a money box in his hands? Do you recognise him? Maybe. Maybe I've seen him around before. I can't really be sure. Ronnie, you were at that parade, weren't you? Mr. Peace questioned. While the girls were watching the floats go by, you sneaked in the back and took the money box, didn't you? Ronnie said nothing. In fact, Mr. Lovejoy added, the bicycle leaning up against the side of the booth looked strangely like the one you're sitting on right now. Ronnie was silent. His ears turned bright red. Mr. Lovejoy looked at Mr. Peace. Mr. Peace looked at the children. The children looked at Ronnie. Ronnie looked at the ground. No one knew what to say.